right, good morning, Coach. Here we are.
Hey,
hope everybody's doing okay out there.
Did you hear that it got cold?
Oh, yeah.
I'll just check it. I didn't know if you heard, but it got cold, and people got snow, and people got ice, and pools are closed. Every triathlete's, again, timely for our podcast today. We'll go into it here in a minute, but yeah, it's a cool, brisk January 27th, the year 2026. Welcome aboard, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron Podcast. This is episode 904.
Yeah, and thank goodness people told me, because I certainly haven't been outside.
I was going to ask you, like, if you said you didn't get any snow, so I mean, like, you're probably like, yeah, this is like, we got like 10 inches, and they didn't go to school yesterday because it was, I think, like -15, and the roads are still bad. They're back at school today, though, thank God. But yeah, it was a little bit much.
Yeah, I was kind of bummed we didn't get any snow. It's just, brutally cold and blah. Well, the sun's out today, so I can take that.
Yeah, and seriously, I believe that, like, online, like, is like, in my opinion, if you can get sunshine, I would take sunshine and -10 over cloudy and 10. Just give me some sunshine. Yeah. I mean, it really is like, it is the like, just having sunshine, and we've talked about this before, but like, just having sunshine in general makes an enormous difference, I think, for everybody. So hopefully, even if you've got cold, and even if you've got a little bit of sleet, a little bit of snow, hopefully the sun is shining down upon you. Before I go deep into the sun podcast, I hope everybody enjoyed last week's. I have probably a much anticipated update on my new pair of dad shoes.
Oh,
so, I came out, as I'm wearing them around the house now. So I went and shoveled my driveway, and like, I'm a huge fan of the shovel. I don't know why people complain about it. I find that it is like the winter version of cutting the grass. It is therapeutic. You can see your progress. And so, like, when I read Training Peaks and I see all these people, I'm so sore from all the shoveling of the driveway. I'm like, man, like, this is like, I'm not sure how big your driveway is, but I don't feel like it's that, that serious of thing. I will also say that if you're out there, and we don't do sponsors, and we don't do ads, but this will be an ad for what they call the man plow. If you don't have the man plow, get one. You will be done with your driveway in about 5.5 minutes. Greatest invention ever. Absolutely. I mean, I was like, I was looking around for driveways to shovel. That's how much I enjoy. Anyway, I walk outside. I'm not even sure if I'm going to shovel yet, because I'm not sure if the snow is finished. So I'm in my dad shoes, no socks, -15. Put on my jacket, put on my hoodie, my hat, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna go out there and just kind of check and see if we're done here. What are we looking at? Am I really feeling this right now? I did the whole driveway in my dad's shoes, no socks. Toes completely warm. So yeah, so they are stellar. I'm not even sure what brand they are, so this can't really be an advertisement for them. But yeah, get yourself a pair of solid dad shoes, and get yourself a solid set of the man plow, and take care of business. Because I'm telling you, it is a lifesaver, and you won't have to complain about how intense the snow shoveling is in Training Peaks, and does it count as your swim? Because no, it does not. Just for the record, snow shoveling does not cross over and get rid of being able to swim, or getting out of your swim, rather.
The man plow, huh?
Yeah, I'm telling you, dude, you will like, it's amazing.
I was telling an athlete this morning that they were talking about shoveling. Obviously, a lot of people are shoveling it. Probably don't have to shovel a lot. I bought a shovel immediately when I came up here. The first snow, I went out, got about halfway done, and immediately bought a snowblower that night. And now I just put it in 4-wheel drive and go over it. Nobody cares.
Does the Caddy have 4-wheel drive?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I knew that. Look at you. Luxurious off-roading, brought to you by the Cadillac SUV. I love it. It's awesome.
The driveway's kind of wide and long. I mean, it's like a double, triple shovel kind of move, so it's like,
dude, I'm telling you, that's the man plow. Like, I mean, we have a 3-car garage, so it's like, it's wide. It's not super long, obviously, and it's also slanted downhill, which makes life a little bit easier. But Yeah, I mean, just telling you, go get it, and you're welcome. And go get yourself one. But before we get too deep on dad shoes and shoveling, we're turning into that like insurance commercial, that State Farm commercial. They talk about, becoming your parents. That's us. As you guys tuned in, hopefully last week we did a how to not suck at swimming. What'd you say? It was number 16?
Yep, 16.
Yep. Got quite a few text messages, a couple emails on the feedback from that or additional questions. So it seemed like it hit the head for a lot of people. So as I kind of said going into that one, I wasn't going to finish. And my goal today is to finish. I still have I'm setting a very low bar for finishing the cast today with swimming, but I'm going to do my best. So if you haven't listened to the one we did last Thursday, go back and listen to that one. It'll kind of like marry its way through this one. Step 1, step 2, we talked about workout structure. We talked about head position. We talked about breathing. We talked about hip control. And today we're going to move a weight forward. And now that we've gotten, and again, like if you're a person that, like yesterday I worked with a guy here locally who has legit never swam a day in his life. And we spent the entire swim lesson on body positioning and breathing. And like we probably will for like 4 lessons before we even worry about your stroke. Like if you're an athlete and you are struggling with the head position and the breathing and the body positioning, focus on those things first. That's where your biggest return is going to be, not, how early and how vertical your form is going to be, when it goes in and what's your catch like. Focus on those things first before you move forward, like on the technique, which is, again, I think most people want to jump to what we're going to talk about today, which is early vertical forearm, which is that catch phase of the swim, because I feel like people think that's my biggest return on investment. But you got to think about it this way, right? A lot of people will spend enormous amounts of money on their tri-bike. They'll spend, time and research on their aero helmet. They maybe even go to the wind tunnel. They're all about like, your CDA, so like how slippery you are in the wind. Like to me, breathing and body position is going from a position where you're less aerodynamic and putting out 230 watts to getting a great bike fit, becoming very slippery, lowering your CDA, and now you only have to push 205 watts for the same speed or greater. That is body position and breathing, right? It's about getting the most return on investment for your effort, because the effort comes with the catch, right? The catch is where you produce the most force, which we'll talk about today. So if you don't know what EVF, and that's what I'll probably refer to it as for the majority of the podcast, EVF is what they call early vertical forearm, right? So a few things before we kind of get rolling on that, then I'll do the same thing where I pause and get your solid feedback on things and your perspective. But one of the most important pieces, and I think I see this all the time with athletes, is people think that they have an early vertical forearm because they simply bend their arm. But that is not the case. Moving your arm underwater with a bent arm is not early vertical forearm. You need to think about an early vertical forearm as going from 1 lever to 2 levers. And so early vertical forearm is when your fingertips are facing the bottom of the pool and you've got that kind of 90-degree arm with your upper arm, then going to your lower arm, and you've got your hand and your forearm facing behind you in the pool. That is the catch phase. That is what propels you forward. That is what produces force backwards, that propels you forwards. Okay. When you enter the water, okay, and this is something almost impossible to kind of force you to visualize via a podcast, but when you enter the water, and let's say your hand is straight, you now have 1 lever, right? So you've got a connected lever, your shoulder to your elbows to your wrist, and your hands. That is 1 lever. Now, where a lot of people get confused is they just simply bend their arm by, if you're standing up right now and you're listening to this, which I, encourage you to do, get a few extra air squats in. If you're standing, with your, again, arm shoulder width apart and even, right, and just extended out with no bend, there's your lever. Again, shoulder to elbow to wrist. Well, what you see a lot of people do is they enter the water like that, and then they just simply move their elbow out, and now they have what looks like an early vertical forearm because their arm is now bent. But they continue to move their arm in the shape of a clock. I've talked about this in a previous podcast that, if I was to draw, on a dry erase board, the hands of a clock, that is how most swimmers and especially triathletes move their arms under the water. You've got 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock. That is the surface of the water, right? So the hand is your stroke. And then most athletes move that from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock in a circle. So you bring your arm up, you move in a circle, you push water down, you push water minimally back, right? Kind of in that in that like 5 to 7 o'clock range. And then you pull mostly water up, right? So pushing water down, not the end of the world, because it actually pushes you up in the water, elevates you up. Pushing water up is bad because it pushes you down, right? It creates more resistance. So of all that effort you're doing from that 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock position and below on the clock, you're only getting about 30% force backwards, and the other two are just negating each other, right? So that's not a great return on investment. So when you extend your arm out, the goal is to create two separate levers, where your upper lever, shoulder to elbow, stays on that same plane, and then your fingertips, you just simply drive towards the bottom of the pool, and now you have, again, it looks like a bent lever. Now the trick is just moving that lever below, that second lever, on its own, to where your forearm and your hand are facing the wall behind you for as long as possible. To me, this is one of the hardest things for athletes to kind of not just do from a strength standpoint, but understand and realize when they actually are doing it versus when they are not. Most athletes drop their elbow quick. Most athletes dive into the water with their hands, so they start way, way, way too low in the water, and they don't even have any time to do an early catch. These are all things that, I'll go through a few drills in a minute that I think can help alleviate, or at least help visualize and feel what it's like to get early and vertical. But, get yourself, video yourself, see how well or not well you're catching the water. But an early vertical forearm and how great your catch is the number one way to actually move faster. Once you have, again, breathing and body position correct, it's getting that arm vertical in the water so you can use your forearm, which is considered your paddle. The hand, as I kind of talked about last week, is your steering wheel. Anytime you move water to the right or to the left, it's wasted force, it's wasted energy. You want that hand moving back. And I've also found that hand control in general is one of the most, I think, underrated and underappreciated aspects of swimming, is being able to control that hand to where it stays fairly even and flat on the same kind of plane as your form, without bending it and without turning it to the side. I know it doesn't sound like a huge thing, but even just turning your hand in and out can make a complete difference. And so on that catch phase, I'm going to shut up for a second. I like to use my thumb as a point of reference. So I enter the water, thumb is in front of my eyeball, and then all I'm doing is taking my thumb and taking it to my hip pocket. That is it. That is how you do that is how you do a catch. That's how you do early vertical forearm. You don't want your arm out too wide, because that puts too much strain on your shoulders. And yes, you want still water, but the water is almost too still. So it really slows down your stroke rate, and you're kind of swimming like a square. You want to swim really tall, right? You never want to swim like a square with your arms out too wide, right? Because it's very hard to be. I always tell swimmers, like, swim like you're on your tippy toes, right? So swim in a rectangle, reach your arms up, center your tippy toes. That is nice and long. That's how you're supposed to swim. Long on the tips of your toes is great swimming, and it also makes you have better body positioning because you stay longer. One of the things I did at the swim camp I had a few weeks ago was I put these kind of PVC pipe hurdles that I took from another part of the gym, and I just put them out along the pool. And they were high enough to where when swimmers went over them, it only gave them about 6 to 8 inches from the surface of the water to the top of the hurdle. What they had to do was make sure, obviously, they weren't hitting their feet on it, they weren't hitting their arms, their fingertips on it. And you could see them when they would go over one of these hurdles really have to work hard to lengthen themselves out to stretch over it, so their lower limbs, right, their core, their hips, their knees, their feet weren't dragging and going to hit this PVC pipe. So be long and tall, with your strokes, and use that thumb as a guide. I'm here, and then I hit my pocket, right? And just like I talked about, you don't want to be too wide, right? Because water is too still, makes you swim more like a square and not streamlined, more like a rectangle. Is you also don't want to work on water completely underneath you. You see a lot of athletes get their thumb and it tracks more towards the belly button, or even on the other side of their belly button. And that just, again, water feels easiest there. This is where I see a lot of swimmers go, because we're human. We always want to go to the path of least resistance. The water is flowing fastest directly underneath us, kind of through our midline where our belly button is. So if you're on, when your arms get tired, you want to most people take their hand on that catch and move it underneath their body, because that is where the path of least resistance is. The water's flowing. It's the equivalent of like walking up the stairs, right? Which is an appropriate catch, nice and forced. You can feel your muscles moving, versus walking up an escalator, which is too far underneath you. And so you really want to be in that, like, I used to say swimming like a house, and I've kind of revised that because I feel like it makes people too wide. It's just using those thumbs again as a visual. Enter, thumbs in front of eyes, and then you just take those thumbs and drive them towards your pockets.
Yeah, that
Break.
that last one's, I think, a good visual, because people think wide is like straight out to the side, and I think a lot of times that's just said to keep it from, crossing over too much. But as you were talking, I had, I guess, three thoughts. I'm sort of I am an adult onset swimmer, so I, always have a lot of these issues, it seems like. And I think three things I hear a lot, or I think people think about a lot, is one, everything you're saying there, I totally get. And I think this is just what I feel like people maybe struggle with mentally, is that entry point. As in, I like how you said that, swimming on your tiptoes. It's like getting out there. Certain people, I think as you get more flexible and strong, you can reach even further. But at some, it has to be sort of relative to where you're at with this. But like, how far do you reach? And then without overreaching. And then secondly, is sort of this, I don't want to, well, I guess it technically is sort of a bit of a glide. Do you glide a little to let your body catch up so you can actually get to the lever part? And then third, you're talking about fingers. And I think a lot of people are uncertain whether to, I think a lot of people naturally might want to swim with their fingers closed, or you keep them a little bit open in that web sort of, position.
Man, it's like you're in the news business, because all the buttons to push. Yeah, those are actually things I was going to talk about next. Is perfect. But like, so,
okay.
Yes, like that is but it's a great segue, because it is, and I find it different with a lot of athletes. Like, depending on, a lot of it has to do with, honestly, like what your morphology is like. If you're a short athlete with a short torso and short arms, you're going to have a very different stroke rate than if you're 6'4", super long torso, right, and arms like an orangutan. Like, you're going to swim differently. That's just how it's going to be, and that's okay. That's why you have to kind of like how you're built, how you're made, and just kind of like lean your way into it, which is just something that's like really, really important. I think oftentimes, overlooked. But where the hand enters, like, so if you've got, normal to above average length arms, I always tell people, you want to have your fingertip, like your middle finger, entering, in front of your eyes, like around 6 to 8 inches in front of it. The trick here, and this is where, again, like I find it, even with myself, like looking at myself on video, when I enter like that, the challenge here is to enter and then flatten your hand out. A lot of people, if they want to enter like that, where they're looking at like the very tip of their finger, dive straight down. You don't ever want to dive straight down. So you dive straight down and you miss that first whole third of opportunity. And then you honestly can't even, then you're not getting into, then your EVF has turned into an LVF, a late vertical forearm, if you can even get there and be vertical, because your arm is now so deep and so low, you cannot get an early vertical forearm. So you just do that windmill stroke, where you're just pushing water down, a little bit back, a lot of water up. So the challenge here is to enter the water right with your fingertips and then drive it and flatten that out. Again, it's all about hand control, flattening it straight out. And again, and I do this at every camp and with every swimmer. The trick here is this, and this is where I hear, I think a lot of people are told different things. They hear glide, they hear reach, they hear extend. You're like, what do I do? Like, I'm not a fan of gliding, because to me, gliding means I've reached maximum speed and now I'm committed to slowing down before I start over. So I'm not a fan of gliding. I think it teaches you to slow down. I'm all about being efficient. I don't want you to glide. And what you said about like waiting for things to catch up. So again, like, and this is this is what I show people on deck when I work with them is like, again, if you go back to, so like I'll make an athlete face me again with their arms completely extended out and straight, shoulder width apart and shoulder height, right? So you're perfectly square. And then I ask them with their arm, kind of set back where the shoulder is. So, set back towards their body. I put my hand underneath their hand and I ask them to press down, and I cannot resist them. Like they will push me down every single time. Doesn't matter how weak, doesn't matter how old they are, doesn't matter. They can always dominate because they have leverage. Okay. Their arm is set back with plenty of tension, plenty of leverage. They can push down, right? Which is the example of like early vertical forearm. You want to have leverage to engage your lat, which is that anchor of the lever point to do the catch. Here's where I have a huge issue on just overall the teaching of swimming and how you explain it or the direction you're trying to give athletes is if you go back to that kind of that set position like I talked about where shoulders set back, again, arms are straight in front of you, completely straight and level. And now I ask you to extend forward as far as you can, right? So you're extending, right? You got to extend. When you extend that far, and now I place my hand underneath you, doesn't matter how strong you are, doesn't matter how big you are, doesn't matter how old you are, you cannot push my hand down. It's never happened because you've lost all leverage. Everything is so lengthened out and long, you have no leverage. So now, right? So let's say you're fully extended, right? And you're doing this, standing up in your office, with your blind shut, taking a lunch break. Once you've done this, the only way to regain leverage, right, is to wait for your body to swim back to where your shoulder is set in place, and you can then now recreate with positive leverage, shoulder over elbow, elbow over wrist, and do my catch. So you don't ever want to overextend. What I encourage, and I'm a huge fan of, is what we call hip-driven freestyle. So you enter, like I said, keep that hand flat towards the surface of the water, and I extend with my hip forward, right? We talked a little bit about hip control on the podcast last week, right? Your hips are your lower body's rudder and lower body's control, right? And so the more you open up your hips, we talked about the light switch. Hope some of you actually, went out and did that to kind of, see what it feels like to breathe or not breathe like that. You want to keep those hips under control, and instead of moving them side to side, right? You want to move them again. When you breathe, you're going to have some side to side rotation. That is good. You don't ever want to over rotate, right? So if I'm viewing you on video from the side and you go to breathe, I shouldn't see your belly button and your far nipple. Period. So if you're breathing to the right, yeah, I should see maybe your right nipple, period, right? But I should never see the one on the opposite shoulder, and I should not see your belly button. That means you're opening up too much. Because if you're opening up your upper body too much, guess what? It's also, then I can probably see your knees and I can probably see your feet. All you're doing is creating turbulence from the core down, which is the opposite of what you want. So on that vertical forearm, you don't want to catch, you don't want to over glide. But again, where you enter, you just have to be very, very mindful that you're not diving in and you're not diving to the bottom like a pelican going for a fish. The hardest thing, I talked about that kind of that piece before, is that hand control, is flattening it out and always maintaining positive leverage. So you see this a lot too, athletes will enter the water and extend and then let their elbow drop, which is the cardinal sin of swimming. Because now you have your shoulder, your elbow is underneath it, and now your wrist is above it. Now you have negative leverage. Now you have nothing, right? You always want your shoulder, you want mechanical advantage, shoulder over elbow over wrist, period. Because now that's how you get into your catch phase. So again, those are all great points. And again, it takes time, but there are things you can do, right, to help alleviate that. I have certain again, I'm a huge, if you don't know a set of paddles, you're doing yourself a disservice. They are the absolute cheapest tool, I think, in all of swimming, and the one that will last you. I think the set of paddles I've got are 8 years old.
Yeah.
They are so cheap and they are so versatile. I talked about the head paddle drill in the last podcast. These are two, great things. I've actually taken, I've got a set of red paddles and a set of green paddles. I've actually, on my green paddle, I'll slide it on, and I've actually written on the underside of it, I've written the word yes. So, because when I have it on my hand and I get my fingertips facing down early enough, if I can't read the yes, then I'm too late. Right? You can use a snorkel for that. You can just swim with your head up, pull buoy your fins, whatever you want to use if you need those things. But just having these cues, I think, helps connect, late adult onset swimmers to like a visual cue that tells them they're doing it correctly. Like there's just a lot of things that like we have done that are just second nature and habit that we have no earthly idea like how to change it because they've become so natural. It's like, things that you want, like, we have all these habits that we do on a day-to-day basis that aren't involved with sport that we do, subconsciously. People are like, hey, did you ever notice that you do this? And you're like, no idea. And like, you can't stop it. Like you're just going to do it for forever. And so like I wrote little yes, it makes it easier for me to do the catch that way. Another great drill that I've had a lot of my swimmers do this week is instead of actually using your paddle as the way it's intended, I'm sure the stroke makers, inventors are like rolling over in their grave right now, is instead of doing that, just simply grab your paddle by the end and just kind of like slide it through, like you're kind of holding on to it like the pinch of a crab, and then enter like that. And then it kind of extends your ability to have a paddle. And then it forces you to drive your hand, because then it makes you take your hand to drive the paddle down. And if you're doing that, if your hand drives down, elbow pops up. Now I'm getting the early vertical forearm. Like that's another great drill to use to kind of get your hand entry correct and then engage in the catch correctly. The other thing you can do, the last one on this is fist drill. I'm a huge fan of fist drill. Again, swimming with your hands closed. A lot of people have this, and we see this all the time in our camps. We call people want to pet the kitty or like touch the surface of the water. They don't have very good feel for the water. They're kind of like waiting to hit the water. Then they can you can see them thinking through their stroke, and it slows you down. So removing that sensory piece, because your hand has just so many, sensory things in it because it's your hands, right, and your fingers, that when you remove that, you kind of get into your stroke quicker. So it can also help increase your stroke rate. And then once you get fully extended, a level up from this is like I have like a huge bag of like those little bouncy house balls, like that are multicolored, and you can hold on to those and get yourself a pair of those, stroke in, and then getting your wrist down, just like knocking on the door, and it pops the elbow up, and then you can do your catch that way. And if you ever graduate from those, you can do baseballs. That's like a strength thing and an arm turnover thing. But those are three great drills. Again, super cheap in the world of triathlon. Good luck like being able to purchase like 2 of the bouncy house balls. They come in like a giant case, but those are some great drills to kind of just get you focusing on seeing and feeling what it's supposed to be like for early vertical forearm. And again, going back to what you said about, how much do I enter? Where does my hand go? Like those are things that you've got to, again, like I don't want your head up all the time, but sometimes you have to see your hand do it and then know. Like I'm telling you, hand control is so crucial with swimming, is like controlling your hand. And like you said, you don't want your fingers like splayed out unless they were webbed, then you're set. But if you don't have webbed hands, right, like the rest of us, then you don't want them like wide open. But you also don't want them so like tensely pinched and closed, because then you're also not relaxed, right? Like it's very hard for me if I'm sitting here, right, and I have to squeeze my fingertips closed and also have a relaxed arm. Yeah. Right? If you're just sitting here and you close your fingertips and you like want them like closed, you can feel it like through your forearms and even through your biceps, like how much tension you have. And that goes completely against like having just a nice relaxed recovery above the water. So yeah, just like have them, lightly touching. Again, if there's a gap, there's a gap, but I want like a small gap. I don't want them also, like you said, I don't want to see the number 5. Right? Like splayed out when you swim, but I also don't want them like, so cramped up, like your hands are like seizing.
Yeah, that's good, man. All right. I got a few thoughts again. Going back to this hip driven freestyle thing. I really like that. And I actually do that a lot. It reminds me, cause I'm always looking for, instead of just like over focusing on stuff that, is just maybe, I don't know how to say this. It's sort of like when I'm drumming, I don't play with my shoulders. I kind of think about having loose wrists and things of that nature. Or like if I'm running, I don't like overthink about form. I just kind of focus on my glutes a lot. and that seems to pull me together for whatever reason. When you said hip driven freestyle, I'm always doing that. If I just start thinking about my hip drive, it sort of starts taking care of other things sort of naturally, because it takes my mind off of trying to like, where's my hand, all this kind of other shit. It just sort of like makes me swim better. And then it kind of happens, it's sort of like dancing, you can't overthink it. You can kind of like, work your hips and it kind of starts happening and coming together. And because I think a lot of times what happens to us, it's almost like, not really, but it's sort of like we're swimming uphill or kind of getting that drowning feeling. We're trying to reach out and pull ourselves out of the water rather than being on top of it. And I think the hip drive, and like what you said about that PVC pipe or whatever, that type of motion and sort of like really almost more explosiveness from the core than just trying to explode with the arms all the time, because your core has so much more strength. And I think we underutilize it in a lot of ways. And, it's funny you were talking about, Tarzan drill and swimming with those bouncy balls and that thing. And I just wonder, because no one wants to do it, but what if you just like started swimming a lot with bouncy balls? Like, it would be, you'd be like, shit, my times or whatever. But I just wonder, like, if that was a huge part of the set. Have you ever done that with people? Like, where it's just like, hey, I need you to swim this whole thing with like a fist drill, because like,
no, it's like, it's funny you say it, because I've tried it before, and I mean, to be totally frank, like I never stuck with my like some consistency long enough to see it through. But I actually got this idea like 2 something years ago. Like we've used fist drill for 6, 7, 8 years, but I actually got this idea listening to the year that Sam Laidlow won or got second in Kona. So was that 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago? I was listening to an interview with his dad, and he said he had Sam swim with stones in his hand.
Yeah.
Like he didn't say like how heavy they are, but swim with stones for like pull sets. We're talking like 4, 5, 600s. And he just talked about like how like his philosophy, and this has largely been mine to an extent, is he was like, especially in like your race season, 70.3 Ironman training, like you should get out of the water and you should have to like use your core to like sling your arm on the pool deck. That's how tired they should be. Like, cause it is all about muscular endurance. And you see it all the time too. It's like, cause I always find it fascinating when, how much little weight people put into like muscular endurance and arm strength and swimming, but like how many times you see people just having to shake their arms out during a long run.
Yeah.
Like imagine like a lot of that comes from just a lack of muscular endurance in your arms, period. And so especially some of the positions people are trying to get in now on the bike, like you need muscular endurance, you need fatigue, and that is exactly what swimming with like these, I mean, they're very, very challenging. I've seen a lot of athletes, like I haven't done them extensively, but I've had quite a few, maybe 10 or 12 that have done some longer sets, and they have all said, hey, like this really, really sucks when I'm doing it. But then 2 things happen. Like one, it's kind of like, drill EPO for swimming is you do it so much with the ball in your hand, and like even just the weight of that ball, you don't think it's a lot, but like just the increased turnover, how much stronger your arms get. And then when you remove that ball, you gain a flat hand. So your arms are now more muscular and more resilient and have better fitness, better strength endurance, and you get a whole hand to press water back. Like that's another thing I love about fist drill. Even if you don't want to like swim with the balls and like you don't want to like go that far, fist drill is great if you're doing like builds, like 50 build, 25 fist, 25 build, because when you swim a 25 fist, once you can open your hands again, you feel like you have 7 hands. Like you're like, oh my God, I can feel all the water. Like to me, it's a lot like, even though people like completely hate sculling, most times because they're doing it wrong. But if you like know how to scull and you scull for a 25 and you come back you say you do 25 scull, 25 swim, the feel you have on your forearms and your hands is like so magnified. You're like, this is what it feels like to be a swimmer. Like, this is exactly what it's supposed to feel like. So yes, you have to, like, you've got to be able to feel those things, and you've got to be able to, do things that, again, make you stronger, make you more fit. But yeah, I mean, you know, frankly, if I can ever get, consistent with my own swimming as much as I'd like to, instead of working with people on it, then I would love to try, like, hey, just work yourself up to, yeah, like, you're not going to
Yeah.
be going fast. Again, and I think that's the problem, right? Is like, people are so obsessed with like going fast that they take all these shortcuts and then wonder why they can't ever get faster in the pool. It's like we always joke about, you know, most swimmers' mentality when they walk on the pool deck is, how quickly can I get this set done? And I always joke with this, my athletes is like, if I give you like a 2400 swim, let's say it's just like a simple like 24 100s, I can see when you swim 2400 straight, because you're like, God, that's so boring. Like, 10 seconds. I just want to get out of here. I got to get on with my day. And so you just swim 2400 straight. Like, so just for like, just a little bit of context here, like, let's say it's like 10 seconds rest, you're swimming 24 100 solid, right? That 10 seconds rest isn't because you need it fitness wise. It's to give you a chance to reset and stay focused. Start over again, break it up into hundreds, right? That's like a very, very important thing for all athletes to do, is to do that. And yeah, let's say you swim 2400 straight. Well, you might have good form and you might be able to stay present and focused the first 700 of it. But for the last, 1700 of it, you're going to be off in la la land, thinking about groceries, thinking about your kids, thinking about, the race you're doing, thinking about, what your weekend plans are. And next thing you knew, you spent a third of the time doing the stroke right, and then 60% of the time continuing to implement bad habits, right? And all you did was save 240 seconds. So you save 4 minutes, basically 2 stoplights, right? So like, you had 2 extra stoplights on the way home, and you're getting back home the same time as if you had just done the set normal. And, it is a proven fact, if you do these set intervals that your swim coach tells you to, you're more likely to hit more green lights. Period.
Yeah, that's
I'm
a
telling
fact.
You.
No,
just saying, like, that's what happens.
but that's a good point I think you bring up, because, so much of swimming and everything really is kind of not being in la la land, right? So what's it going to take? And I think that building up endurance is all part of it. So when I mentioned, swimming a whole set with fist drills or whatever like that, that's a ridiculous statement, because you got to start in a way where you can build it manageably, because, maybe every other 25 or something like that, or just like start off with a couple hundred a day, or this week, and maybe build that to 300, like something that is manageable, that you can kind of stay focused on. Because, when we start drifting and everything like that, like you're saying, you start reinforcing bad habits really without thinking about it. And I do think that that's one of the hardest things to do in this sport, is to, nobody wants to swim a whole set with, fist drills, but like working on that kind of thing will pay off so much. It's just, I don't know. It's just like, how do we get ourselves committed to actually getting better, without starting to think like you just were talking about, like getting out of there with 2400 real quick, instead of just really kind of almost beginner's minding it and getting in there and just really be like, all right, I'm learning stuff. I don't know it all, and I'm just trying to figure this shit out all the time. But I think it's important to start in a manageable way with these things.
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's like, I was telling somebody yesterday, it's like, if you can dedicate an hour, right? Just dedicate an hour. It doesn't matter how far you swim, because that's something every triathlete and every swimmer is obsessed with. How far can I get in an hour? Right? Well, efficiency is speed. It's about return on investment, how efficient I can get. So just stop worrying about, especially right now. Yeah, when you get closer to race day, you need to start focusing on, how much distance you can travel, getting your body used to the demands and the energy that's required for the day. But stop obsessing about how much yardage I'm getting in each and every time. So I can upload it to Strava, and everybody can show me how I can see how much yardage I'm getting in. Well, if it's the wrong yardage and your swim technique is shit, then what are you even doing? I mean, it's irrelevant. Like there's no point in doing it. And like these long swims, it's the equivalent of like going out for an hour run. You spend the first 20 minutes running forwards and the last 40 minutes running backwards. You still ran for an hour, but only 20 minutes of it was the running you were supposed to do, because then you were doing 40 minutes of just exercise and work with bad habits. Like, just if you got an hour, use that hour to the best of your ability. Slow things down, work on being more efficient. Like, and it's just, and you see this at every level. And it's like that with swimming, because it is so technical. And even on like the competitive teams, like they've got 2 coaches on deck with 50 swimmers. There's absolutely no way that they can keep track of every form and technique. But you have to focus on the skill first and then focus on the speed second, because the speed will come with the efficiency, and you'll never have max top end speed without full on great technique. It might not be perfect. You might always have something to work on. But remember, the goal is to, especially if you're doing long course stuff, like the goal is maximum efficiency, period. Maximum efficiency. How efficient can I be? How quickly can I move at the lowest energy cost possible? And that comes down to technique. Swimming, of all the 3 sports and disciplines in triathlon, swimming is the one where the most economical athlete gets the biggest return on their investment. Cycling is the last. Running is second. Like, but swimming is that. It's that. But that's also, right, what makes it so challenging, which I find, like, honestly, like, very fascinating from a coaching standpoint, in that, I could give an athlete a swim set that's, 1,800 to 2,000, once a week for 8 weeks. And it can be very drill, very technique focused, all focused on, making them a better swimmer and a more efficient and a more technically sound swimmer. Right. And I also, like, I just want to say, like, it bothers me when people say, oh, you can't get better with someone giving you swim workouts and online coaching. I'm like, that's just total horseshit. Like, if you get the right stuff, you're going to get faster in swimming, period. If you put the time, if you don't put the time in, then, you're not going to get better. But if I was like, hey, I'm going to give you, 1,800 to 2,000 yards every Monday for the next 8 weeks, and we're going to do heavy technique focus, on making you a more efficient and technically sound swimmer. And then they'd be like, oh, yay, can't wait. But I was like, hey, for the next 8 weeks, we're going to do a VO2 max bike block. And so every Tuesday, you're going to do 30-30s, you're going to do 4x6s at VO2, and you're going to feel fucking obliterated when you're done. They're like, sign me up. I'm in. They're like, I want to do it. Let's go. Like, when can I start? Right? Because they just want to work hard. Like, but even after like that 8 weeks, you might gain, I mean, who knows what you'll gain under VO2 max? Like, you might gain, let's say you gain 5 or 6 watts on your maximum lactate steady state and your threshold, like that. And over the course of an Ironman, that might save you, like 90 seconds, maybe. Or you can get better in your swimming, right? And, you're taking off, even if you take off like 10 seconds, just 10 seconds, per 100, that's it. And the average Ironman swim, depending on how, straight you can swim, what's that, 4,400 yards. So you're looking at 440 seconds. I mean, there's 7 minutes for you. I mean, so I don't, like, again, I know it's not the popular thing. I know a lot of people say, you don't put the time investment in the swim, and it, like, I can't stand when coaches say that, because usually what all that means is that coach is convinced that they can't get people to swim faster, or they don't know how to teach it. So they don't want to tell people, like, hey, you don't need to know how to swim to do triathlons. Yeah. First of all, you need to know how to fucking do it for a safety, period. Being confident in the water, right? Like, being confident in the water, towing the start line, with a positive mindset that you're ready. That should be priority 101, right? Getting a start line healthy, and then getting in the water without fear and anxiety and ultimate confidence, Have that. And so it's just like it's always like, you know, mesmerizing and like insanely frustrating to see like coaches continuously talk about how the swim doesn't matter or how it's overrated or you don't need to swim that much. And I'm like, then I'm sorry, but you obviously can't coach or teacher. You wouldn't be saying that, right? You need to be able to know how to do this. And like I said, 7 minutes versus 90 seconds, sign me up. Period. You know, you do want your swimmers to panic because there's all of a sudden there's like, oh my God, there's no wetsuit, right? Like it just these things are again like they're non-negotiables they should be non-negotiables for every triathlete to focus on these things. It's the easiest return on investment. I mean, I just had a swimmer comment that came to the camp. He goes 10 seconds faster per 100. I mean, that's simple. I had an athlete yesterday who went from 22 strokes per 25 to 15, same time, less effort. Like just take the time to be more efficient. And like I know like we as triathletes, like we have this mentality of just wanting to work harder, just want to work harder, just want to work harder. You know, I'm a workhorse. But like at some point, you know, that chassis is going to break or you're going to reach the point to where effort doesn't get it. Because at the highest level of all sports, it's about, you know, paying attention and taking care of the fine details. You know, and if the best swimmers on the planet are still trying to tweak their technique, right, and are still trying to find out things they can do better, then why aren't we, right? Why are we doing like 2K straight swim, 4x500s, you know, and then that's all we're swimming for this week? You know, I'm like, well, that's not like, hello, that's not how we get better. And so if you signed up for a triathlon and you want to be the best triathlete you can be, and not just a do athlete that swims, take the time to figure these things out. And again, like once you get it, like invest the time to get it, right? And do it now, you will be a better swimmer. You will be a better triathlete. You will bike better and you will then run better. It's a cascade effect. It doesn't just stop at the end of the swim when you get out of the water. It is a cascade effect and has a positive return across both both your cycling leg and your run leg.
Yeah. It's like, you know, I always have a quest to, you know, figure out what can I do to make that race feel easier or make what I'm doing feel easier. And that doesn't mean that I'm being lazy. Sometimes like that thing about swimming with balls in your hand, that sounded weird, but like, it just sucks. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you gotta, like, it doesn't always have to be like super hard, but it's the drudgery of kind of going through a process over and over and over to lock it in. So, you know, whether that's, you know, high ankles when you're running or whatever it may be on the bike or staying in aero or working on better position. Those things are hard, and they're not hard in the sense that they're going to just destroy you, but they're hard mentally to kind of lock in and make natural. And then it becomes easier, right? And then you can, you know, obviously strength plays a piece, but it's like you said, the economy and the efficiency of having right form and right technique, that really goes a long way, but it's hard to work on because it seems boring or it seems like a pain in the ass or whatever like that. So it's a different kind of hard, you know? And
yeah. I mean, it's like, yeah, you mean, you put that really well. And like, I think I would, I would use like the same, you know, or the analogy or the same like concept we have behind like extra 30-minute runs each week. Like you won't see it, or even just like aerobic conditioning. Like you don't see it overnight. Like you don't get the immediate return on the investment from a gratification standpoint, right? Unless you have like an aha moment, then you immediately do. But like you know, you do 2 extra 30-minute runs for 6 months. That's 24 hours of running, or 12 hours of running extra. Yeah, no, I'm right. That's an hour a week. Yeah, my math is on point. That's a whole day of running, 24 hours over 6 months for just 2 30-minute runs a week. Yeah. That's insane. Like, I mean, the amount of that's from a volume standpoint, like that makes you more economical. You might not see a quantifiable immediate return like on every 30-minute run, but like the compounding effect of it, right? Your triathlon interest, like it just continues to rise. And that's the same thing with just focusing on some of these swims. And I've even done this, like not come back around, but like started to do this even more often with athletes, is just continue to drill in. Like you got to stay up on your skills, because if you don't, and again, like this, to me, like this is the best time of year to do it. Like, do you want to me, it's like, hey, do you want to go hop on your trainer because it's too freaking cold outside and ride for, 90 minutes straight in an endurance zone 2 ride? Or do you want an endurance ride with like 15 steps in it that like at least keep your attention, right? It goes up, it's still zone 2 at the end of the day, but at least keeps your attention, can break things up in like 5 or 6 minute blocks. Same thing with swimming right now, right? It's like, might be hard to get the pool, but break it down. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. All right, I'm going to do this. You have a focus and a purpose when you go to the pool. And I think that's honestly like one of the biggest reasons people don't get better is they have no idea what to do when they get to the pool. They have no purpose. They have no goal. There's nothing specific that they're focusing on. So if you don't have anything to focus on, you don't have anything specific, how do you expect to leave feeling, gratified and fulfilled and accomplished? When you have no goal except to make it through the day, right? It's like, make it through the swim. No wonder you don't feel anything or like enjoy doing. You have no goal. You have no focus. You have no purpose behind it. You don't know what to do or what not to do. You just are trying to get it done from minute one. So find a way to, do a better job of laying things out and being purposeful with it and engaging with it. And that, to me, that's half the battle most of the year for athletes, but like especially right now is get them to go to the pool with the purpose, and keep them engaged in that process during the swim, not just with how much yardage they got in at the end. You got to get in yardage at some point. Like we talked about last Thursday about muscular endurance and getting the fitness and the strength to hold the form you want to work on. But take the time. If you're new to swimming, don't make bad habits now and try and change them later. Just start slow, start with good habits, and I'm telling you, like you will thank yourself in a few months. Maybe not next week, maybe not even next month, right? But you will thank yourself later on in the year or even next season when you're not having to try to go backwards and fix your swim, or you think you've gotten too far into the sport that it's not even worth your time. Like that's to me, that's the mentality that a lot of athletes fall in, and it's no secret why they continue to, regress in the water, and they have poor bike splits that end up blaming it on the run, or they just never get any faster. That's just it's a piece of the puzzle. And the longer you're in this sport, the more opportunity you have to get better.
Yeah, be mindful in that work.
Yeah, be mindful in that work, not just going through the motions.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to play for that.
Okay. Well, do we get through it? I don't know.
All I got through was Early Vertical Forearm, but that'll be it for this week. We'll move on to something different. I'm sure people are saying like, oh my God, here's another swim chat.
I was laughing earlier because whenever we talk about how to not suck at swimming, I always think back to the first podcast we did, I think, which is on pull buoy, which I think is maybe out there somewhere. I don't know, but
it's got to be somewhere out there in the ether. Matt was sitting right next to you, staring at you, having this conversation at your old house in East Nashville.
Yeah, like, I mean, that has to be just unbelievable.
Right
how did?
Yeah.
I think we were both sitting there with pull buoys.
I think
Wait, method acting.
God, that was like 11 years ago.
Unbelievable, man. With those
11 or 12 years ago, for sure.
Little cheap ass headsets on and just looking at each other like, what is this? What are we doing?
That was like what, a year and a half before we even like started this actual one.
That could be.
Yeah, dude, it was like ways back.
Yeah. Boy, that has to sound amazing.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I can tell you right now, I'm not going to look for that one.
I might look for it. Maybe I'll post it out there somewhere.
Yeah, it's like getting back home, and when you're in like 8th grade, going through puberty, and you like hear yourself on the answering machine. You're like, get that out of my ears right now. No one wants to hear themselves on the answering machine. Go away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
I can't
podcast 0.
imagine how horrible that. I can't imagine how. It's true though. Been steadfast in the pull buoy. Huge fan of it. If you don't have one, go buy yourself one. It's not cheating. It is. It's a helps you do better. Well, listen. As always, we love you guys. We appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It is our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you need anything from Mike, he is available. Mike at c26triathlon.com. If you need anything from me, Robbie at c26triathlon.com. If you are looking to join us at one of our camps this year, we got our Nashville Tri Camp still open. That's on our website under the camps tab. And then if you want to join us at our almost sold out Wisconsin camp, one of our most popular camps that we have, great time. We got tons and tons, as you can tell by the 904 podcasts we have, with like 20 of them dedicated to Ironman Wisconsin alone. Tons of experience and knowledge on that course. And again, who really needs an excuse to visit Madison? So we got that camp. That's in late July. Check those out. And I guess we'll see you on Thursday.
All right, man. Stay warm. Get that man
dude.
shovel done.
See you, dude.
See ya.